So how do the flying bosses in Monster Train move? Is there a pattern to them? In this video, I want to show you a thorough analysis on how Daedalus, Fel, and Seraph move when you are fighting them. I can't guarantee that my analysis is 100% correct because I am not the developer, but I will analyze this based on my previous run experiences, and I do have 265 hours on Monster Train. So let's go! Daedalus is the first major boss or flying boss that you get to face. He has 3 versions that I have thoroughly analyzed in this video on screen right now and on the top right corner for you to click on, and here are them on screen right now for you guys as well. The simple answer to the movement of Daedalus is just random. However, it's not totally random and you can predict it. In the first turn, Daedalus can appear on any floor. However, on the second turn, he has to move, and he only has 2 other options to choose from. Finally, on the third turn, he moves to the last floor. Then he repeats the same pattern until final phase. In this example of the early Covenant ranks, he goes from top floor, then middle floor, then bottom floor. After that, he repeats top and middle to go to the final phase. In this example of Covenant rank 25, he starts on the bottom floor, second turn he goes to the top floor. Finally, on the third turn he is on the middle floor. Then he goes to the bottom and top again to finally go to the bottom floor for the final phase. However, sometimes his bombs doesn't follow him and his movement can change. In this example, he starts on the middle floor. On the second turn, he goes to the bottom floor, but not before he leaves a bomb on the middle floor. On the third turn, he goes to the top floor because he has never gone there yet. On the fourth turn, however, because he hasn't placed a bomb on the bottom floor, he actually goes there to place a bomb. Finally, he goes back to the middle floor and then its final phase. So in actuality, the movement of Daedalus is based on his bomb placements. He will always go to the floor where he hasn't placed a bomb yet. After that, he will repeat the cycle. Let's take a look at another Covenant rank 25 run, and it's exactly the same as the previous one. He starts on the middle floor. On the second turn, he goes to the bottom floor, but not before he leaves a bomb on the middle floor. On the third turn, he goes to the top floor because he has never gone there yet. On the fourth turn, because he hasn't placed a bomb on the bottom floor, he actually goes there to place a bomb. Finally, he goes back to the middle floor and then its final phase. After looking at a bunch of my footage of my daily challenge videos, I've concluded that Daedalus will only do this funny movement if he starts on the middle floor. If he starts on the other 2 floors, he will follow the rules and visit every floor once and then once more. So do keep this in mind when playing your next run of Monster Train. Next up is Fel. Fel's movement is very similar to Daedalus. It can be predicted, but he can throw some curveballs at you if you're not careful. The different versions of Fel do actually have an impact on his movement. My theory is that for the Scorch Fel, he will always try to create a Scorch card on every single floor. Since he creates the card every other turn, this can sometimes become impossible to predict. For Armor and Rage Fel, he will always try to go to a floor with enemies on it, keeping within the restriction that he must go to every single floor at least once. Let's take a look at some examples starting with the Scorch Fel. These were my past daily challenges videos. You can still find them on my channel. Anyways, in this example, Fel starts on the top floor, then goes mid and finally bot. He repeats this again, so top, mid, bot, and then goes top for the final turn before final phase. Another example here is bot, mid, top, bot, mid, top, bot, and then final phase. At this point, it seems like we have figured this out, but then there's this run. This threw me off so hard that I just don't know what to think about this. This fight starts off with mid, bot, top, like any other run. Then Fel somehow goes bot after. I mean, he should go to the middle floor, but didn't. It gets even crazier after this. He goes to the middle floor, then the bottom floor again without going to the top floor. At this point, he has gone to top once, mid twice, and bot 3 freaking times. The unevenness is making me question my initial understanding of how Fel moves. Finally, on the last turn before the final phase, he goes top. So I'm theorizing that these are two different commands for Fel's decisions. One is going to every single floor in the order of his first 3 turns, and the second one is he wants to create a scorecard on every single floor. These two commands may have some conflicts. The majority of the time, the first one wins, but the few times the second one can win, thus creating this weird movement pattern. This is just my theory, because I just cannot find a definite answer for how he moves. I have analyzed many of my past runs trying to figure out a pattern in his movement, and so far, this is my conclusion. Maybe a developer can hopefully make a concrete statement on how he moves exactly. Next are the Shield Fel and Rage Fel. These two versions move the same way because they both give buffs to enemies. Phew, that's gonna save me some time. Similar with the Scorch Fel, these guys have their internal commands that they're following. For most of these runs here, these two versions of Fel follow the patterns of 1 2 3, 1 2 3, 1. However, as with the Scorch Fel, there are exceptions. Let's take a look at a normal example first. This Fel starts on the bottom floor, then moves to mid and then top. He then repeats this, and that's his normal movement pattern. Then we have something like this example. Fel starts on the bottom floor again and moves top, and then mid. After that he goes top again, then bot, mid, and finally top. Now with Shield and Rage Fel, the analysis is much easier because Fel is buffing the enemies. I don't know if this is true, but Fel should be prioritizing buffing the enemies if his movement is out of pattern. Other than that explanation, there just isn't a reason for him to move to an empty floor unless he's trying to follow the pattern of moving to all of the floors first. I believe that this theory is very correct because of this run here. In this daily challenge, I was able to kill each wave as soon as it came out of the bottom floor. Also, I cleared all of the Alabaster Guardians so that there aren't any enemy units on any of the other floors. So towards the final few turns of the fight, Fel just moved between top and the bottom floor, but he always buffed the bottom floor. This is because he won't buff an empty floor and will always go to the floor with enemies. If there are multiple floors with enemies, he will try to buff the enemies on the higher floor. Let's take a look at another one that is Rage Fel. This one is on a higher common rank, but the common rank doesn't influence the movement at all. So Fel buffs the middle floor Guardian first, then he moves to the top floor to buff the Guardian there simply because that Guardian is on a higher floor than the other enemies. Then he moves to the bottom floor because he hasn't gone to the bottom floor yet. I think for Fel he has to move to all floors at least once. So Fel would buff the highest floor enemies after he has moved to all floors at least once. Anyways, in this run he then goes top because of the Guardian, then mid and then bot because there are enemies on all these floors. Finally, he finishes up on the top floor. So to conclude, Fel is the most difficult flying boss to predict out of the 3. He follows the command of trying to go to all of the floors evenly, but he also wants to buff enemies, which can make his movement really weird at times. It's like wanting to eat a slice of pizza and wanting to lose weight at the same time. Most of the time you're self-disciplined and eat healthily, but there are those days that you're craving that pizza and you have to eat one. Finally, the last, but definitely not the least, we have Seraph. In order to analyze Seraph, we have to also break him up into 2 parts. The Consume Seraph that doesn't mess with your buffs, and the other 2 that mess with your buffs every single turn. So let's analyze the Consume Seraph first. since this might be similar to the Scorch Fel and just as difficult to analyze. However, after looking at several runs, the Consume Seraph seem very obedient and follow an exact pattern. Out of all of the runs I looked, there aren't any outliers, so I think it's safe to predict where the Consume Seraph will go next after the first 2 turns. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. In this July 13th daily challenge, the Seraph started at the top floor, then moved to mid, and then bot. Then he repeats that again, so top, mid, bot, and finally top again before going to the final phase. In this July 19th daily challenge, he starts at the bottom floor, then moves to the top floor, then mid, and repeat. Bot, top, mid, and finally end up at bot before entering the final phase. Let's take a look at a higher covenant rank run. This was episode 45 of my series on trying to complete Monster Train. Let's just say that it's not going so well. Anyways, in this Seraph fight, we see the Seraph starting on the middle floor, then moves to the top, and ends up on the bottom floor on the 3rd turn. Then he repeats this one more time, so mid, top, bot, and finally ends up on the middle floor before going into final phase. So we can safely conclude that the Consume Seraph moves very predictably and will always go to the floors evenly. And then there are the Cleanse and Sap Seraphs. These Seraphs manipulate the buffs on your units, so they will always go to the floor where you have units. So let's say you have 1 floor of units. These 2 versions of Seraph will always go to that floor every other turn. Every other turn because he has to move away after moving to that floor the previous turn. However, he will cleanse or sap your units before moving away. So the cleanse or sap is still every single turn. Let's take a look at an example. This was episode 35 of my series to completing Monster Train. Because I had the sketches of salvation in this run, my units are getting cleansed on the very first turn. But that doesn't matter because I had no buffs anyways. I placed down the champion and then moved her onto the middle floor on turn 2. Then after that, the Seraph just kept on cleansing the middle floor again and again by moving from the top to mid to top to mid. He can actually move to the bottom floor. It's possible, but we don't see it here. Although it doesn't matter anyway since there aren't any units on the bottom floor to do any damage to Seraph. And this is the reason why it's sometimes beneficial to have a 2nd floor or even 3rd floor of units so that your kill floor isn't being targeted by Cleanse or Sap Seraph all the time. If you have 3 floors, these Seraphs will move evenly between the floors trying to cover all of your units. However, if you have 2 floors, these Seraphs will still cleanse or sap your 2 floors, but it might not be in order. Let's take a look at this July 20th daily challenge. In this run, I've set up 2 floors, so the Sap Seraph is alternating between the 2 floors, but in a weird way. So he starts on the middle floor, and I set up my units there to kill the Lightwing and do some damage to Seraph. At the same turn, I set up units on the bottom floor, so on the next turn, I know that he will go to the bottom floor to sap them. However, on the 3rd turn, instead of going back to sap the middle floor, he first saps the bottom floor again, and then moves to the top floor. Maybe he wants to avoid taking damage, or maybe there's still a command for him to visit every single floor if the condition that he has sapped the floor is met. I just don't know which one is correct. Despite the reasoning, the Sap Seraph is now on the top floor. Then he moves to the middle floor because he hasn't sapped those units in a while, and so rinse and repeat. So it's quite simple with the Cleanse and Sap Seraph. If you want to just win, have 2 to 3 floors to spread out the Cleanse or Sap on your units. And if you want to get as many points as possible, getting that 50k score daily challenge achievement, just have one single floor so that these seraphs will go to that floor more often so you can kill him faster. If you want to learn more about the game, click on this video right now for more fundamental mechanics in Monster Train, and I'll see you over there.